all, this is Het-Heru for Project Illuminated, and today I want to talk to you about basically alternating or shifting to a new reality for yourself. Now, you'll see a lot of people in the occult community, within the spiritualism community, talk about the ability that you have to shift to a new reality, to create and manifest a new world for yourself. Now, much of this is just theory and talk and intellectual masturbation, because they never actually show you how you can do it besides saying, oh, you know what, you got to change your belief system, you know, and when you change your belief system, then the world around you changes. And it's not that simple, nor is that easy, you know. So what I want to give to you today is a definitive approach and techniques to actually changing the reality around you, shifting to a new reality. Now, we all know about the multiverse theory, which basically says there's an infinite number of worlds out there, and you exist in an infinite number of those worlds. And there's different versions of you living out those lives. One is a very poor person, one is a very rich person, one is a world leader, one is a hobo on the street, and so on and so forth. But you're existing in this fourth dimensional plane, and you're not having that great of a time, and you want to shift to a new reality, one that is more prosperous for you. Well, how do you do that? Well, there are a number of ways of approaching that, but what I want to talk to you first, which kind of like is the prelude to this, is the idea that, you know, the emotions that you exhibit, the emotions that you carry on a day-to-day basis are really frames of thought or frames of consciousness. But in African tradition, the way our shaman, our ancient ancestors, the shaman and Sharwin, is that the right term? Well, anyway, let's use a gender-neutral term.
Which makes sense.
They would tell us that really what an emotion is a state of trance that is carried on and it lingers. So in other words, what I'm trying to say in a very long-winded way is that when you are exhibiting an emotion, say for example anger, sadness, or you're grieving over the loss of a loved one, you need to have the ability to get out of that state fairly quickly, because those states, because they're strong emotions, are what's creating a reality for you. And you'll notice that things start to change and shift and happen for you when you're in those states. Now, a lot of people, again, in the spiritualist community, the occult community, the New Age community, talk about how basically there are a couple of ways of approaching it. Their philosophy is, well, you've got to embellish yourself in those emotions and get used to them, and therefore they will dissipate and go away so you won't experience them again. Well, that is a form of kind of like torture, or it could be, from a therapeutic point of view, very damaging to your spirit, because you are allowing yourself to experience that emotion to its fullest extent, and perhaps over and over again. It's not very good for you, you know what I mean? Another school of thought says take that emotion and basically ignore it. When that emotion visits you, just kind of try to ignore it, which is, if you ever thought about ignoring the elephant in the room, it's very difficult. The mere fact that you're trying and focusing on ignoring something means that you are focusing on it, so it's not going to work as easy as what they say. But here's what you have to do. When you're having that emotion, and again, this is going to lead into changing your reality, when you have that emotion visit you, the way that you have to understand that you deal with it is that you have to have been trained in a manner in which to deal with it, because that emotion, whether you like it or not, is going to visit you a number of times in your life, because there are triggers around in our society that will activate that type of emotion, you know what I mean? And this is something as a society we don't focus on. We don't focus on making the individual sane. Where most people are very insane. They're living in an insane world. And I think I'm insane because I'm going in the wrong direction. Let me cross the street here. But you have to be trained first and foremost of how to shift to a different emotional state. Without that proper training beforehand, when an emotion visits you, you're going to be at the whim of that emotion. You're gonna be susceptible to whatever it throws at you, because you have not been, society has not prepared you to shift from one emotional state to another. And some people can do it very easily, and we see this with people who have ADD, attention deficit disorder, where their attention can't focus on one thing for any long period of time, and they're constantly shifting, and they're going through these emotional roller coasters. So, in other words, for a true spiritualist or someone who is into spiritual traditions has to learn, has to be trained in the art of shifting from one emotional state to another and learning that technique to its full extent. Otherwise, all you're going to really do is be susceptible to different emotional states that are triggered and conditioned by society, because society is basically bombarding you with subliminal programming to get you in different emotional states. For example, we live in a society of mass consumerism, but they're getting you to buy things, buy into certain beliefs and ideologies. So now, if you are a master magician or a magi and trained in the art of shifting from one emotional state to the next, then you're in pretty good shape, because you're going to allow any one emotion to dominate you. Now let's go to the idea of shifting to alternate realities and alternate universes. The way you need to do that is that we talked about before, a strong emotional belief system, which is true. You have to have a strong emotional belief in what you want. And that emotional belief has to be all-consuming. But more importantly, it has to be a belief that goes to the core of your being. So that means that you cannot allow any other thought or any other reality to enter the picture or enter the frame. And this is what I want to coin as the metaframe, this terminology used a lot in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So if your metaframe is strong, then whatever that metaframe is going to manifest that reality. And also in NLP, what they say is all frames are equally valid. And the way I want to define a frame for you is this. A frame is nothing more than multiple belief systems. There are different ways of you viewing the world. And some of them, well, let's put it this way, none of them are more legitimate than the other. It's all about what you choose to focus on and what is the dominant belief and the strongest belief that you have at that particular moment. Because the reality is, there is no one reality. Anybody tells you the difference is wrong. There's no one reality. It's really all subjective. There is no objective reality, okay? I'm going to manifest things in my reality that you'll manifest totally different in your reality. So the rules are structured different according to your destiny and your belief system. So let's get that straight for one thing. The other thing that we need to keep in mind here is that when you have that strong emotional belief system, it is not enough in the conscious waking state, because it has to be transferred from the conscious state to the unconscious state. I can tell you so much, and you can accept as a belief system consciously in your left brain, but it's until it is implanted in the seed of who you are and grows and comes to fruition, that it really changes the world around you. And this was symbolized by the ancient Egyptian goddess Aset or Isis, to where she would have the Immaculate Conception, and from that grew Horus or Heru. And that is, Horus or Heru is symbolized by the will. So what I'm saying basically is that in order for that reality that you want to change around you, it has to be a metabelief, a metaframe, something that is accepted at your subconscious level to the core of its being. And the way this is typically done is through meditation, which indoctrinates you into the trance state. But there are some limitations with this, and the limitations are such, is that when you're meditating on visualizing a new reality for yourself, such as getting more money, getting the perfect mate, or even just having the world be a better place to live in, meditation has a very, very limited outreach in terms of changing that reality for you, because you would have to meditate for hours upon days, even in going to years, for it to really get deep seated into your subconscious mind and then become an actual waking trance state. The other way it's done in the occult community is through a number of means. First one you'll see in a lot of cults practice, like Jim Jones and all that, where it's sleep deprivation. When you are deprived of sleep, your subconscious mind opens up and is very impressionable and susceptible to suggestion. And that, in that way, it goes to the core of your belief, of who you are in your belief system, takes root and becomes the metaframe. The other way that's done in the occult arena, and many people are aware of people like Aleister Crowley, the black magicians who practice things of this nature, or the Golden Dawn, is where it's the near-death experiences where you are pushed to the brink of death, and on that brink of death, you are fed a new belief system that is the core belief of your being. Now, that's a very extreme way of doing it, but it is a very successful way of doing it. Because when you come out of that state, it's like the symbol of the phoenix. You're reborn, or the dung beetle, where in ancient Egypt or Kemet, it would go on the ground and come out, and people would say, "Oh, it's reborn." So that's another way of doing it. So I want you to keep in mind that once that core Metabelief system is changed, then the reality around you has no choice but to change to align with that. And we have seen this time and time again with people who suffer from some type of injury or paralysis. When they were taken to the hypnotic state and fed a new suggestion, for example, if a gentleman has problems walking, when he was put into a trance state through hypnosis and told that he could walk, when he got up, he started to walk. Because that meta-belief or meta-core or meta-frame was changed. So what I'm telling you this is that the world around you is an illusion. It is dictated by the beliefs the thoughts and beliefs that you harbor within you. But if you are working and meditating and trying to visualize a new reality for yourself, and it's not working, you have to understand that you're not necessarily going deep enough. And the way that you attack this on a very deep, dedicated spiritual level is through those two ways I talked about. Well, actually 3 ways. It's meditation over a long course of time, maybe years, or it's through sleep deprivation, extreme sleep deprivation, or some type of near-death experience where you're guided to a new belief system. And there's many, many other ways of doing it too. There's things like extreme exhaustion. So when you're at that point of exhaustion, you're giving a new belief and outlook on life that changes that core belief system. All of these will facilitate the actual shift into a parallel world, one that's more prosperous to you if you are fed the correct belief systems. Does that make sense? So I want you to keep this in mind, because many of these so-called gurus out there who are talking about, oh yeah, just change your belief system and think more positively and the world around you will change, is they're not necessarily being dishonest with you, but they're really dumbing it down and simplifying something that has more shades of gray than that. It's a little more intricate than just changing your belief system, because you have to understand, however old you are, let's say you're 35 years old, you have had 35 years of social conditioning to accept the reality that you see around you, which is why it's there in the first place. That reality is not going to go away without a fight. That which is a belief system. And if you understand anything about our ancient ancestors, we looked at those belief systems as spirits. So that spirit is not going to just dissipate and go away without a fight. It has a survival instinct. Sometimes these spirits, we used to call them herbivores, or we had other names for them. But the names are important. They're just labels and definitions. But understand that they are entities that exist for a specific purpose. And you're not going to just wake up one day, accept a new frame or a new belief system, and think that it's automatically going to take root and grow. It's not. It wants to survive, it's going to stay, which is where we see things like racism, which is basically an evil spirit going awry, and it has a self-preservation mechanism. So you're going to have to attack it on a very deep psychic level, if that makes sense. which is why we haven't dealt with the fact from a psychological perspective, and our ancestors knew all about psychology, that many people are harboring a shadow self. And it's that dark side that harbors these negative beliefs, and these beliefs collectively take root and form a metabelief, which is now dominating the planet and is basically causing death and destruction. When we as a collective people on this planet decide to deal with that shadow self, that mass consciousness or collective consciousness shadow self, and to purge ourselves of those evil spirits or evil ideas and belief systems, then the world will be a better place. But not only that, the world will, everyone in this world who's on that collective agreement will shift to a new reality that will be more of peace and harmony. But for that to happen, there has to be global unification of our ideas. Because right now what is being put in place by the ruling elite is the idea of separation. And they have to keep it separated, because if we start to agree on ideas and start to look at how things relate instead of how things don't relate, if we start to agree on things like that and form that collective agreement, then we will shift and they will no longer exist. So that's why they have to create the separation of everything based on religion, politics, ideology, gender, things like that. So keep those ideas in mind, so when you are looking to make that change in the world around you and to make your life a lot better, understand that it's going to take some work on your part, but if you're able to do it successfully, you will live a very happy and productive life. This is Het-Heru for Project Illuminated, and that's all for now.